Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the Hong Kong Green Finance Association's Private Equity Industry Insight Report on ESG and Climate Change webinar. My name is Jenny Lee, the Deputy Secretary General of the HKGFA. This webinar is organized by the HKGFA Private Equity Working Group, now renamed to the Sustainability Related Disclosures, Policies and Standards, Asset Owners and Asset Managers Workstream. And I'm delighted and honored to have a panel of distinguished industry experts and to learn from their experience on how PE and VC firms are practically navigating the ESG and climate landscape and the different approaches that are being adopted, the opportunities, challenges, and nuances on ESG integration between a buyout and a VC firm and a PE fund with a decarbonization angle. Before the panel discussion, I would like to welcome Dennis Wu, Director of Hong Kong Private Equity Finance Association, Vice Chairman and Executive Director of AEC, whom we are grateful for leading this survey, and the collaborative efforts of the working group members for their significant inputs during the preparation of the publication. Please find the QR code on the screen for you to download. It will also be available on the HKGFA website resources page. So before we kick off, just a few housekeeping points. We will allow time for Q&A after the panel discussion, so please put your questions in the Q&A box. If you require attendance to claim CPT hours, please complete the survey at the end of this webinar. So without much further ado, I will pass the floor to Dennis. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Let's see. Let's share the screen now. Okay, that's the report launch webinars. I'm Dennis, and for the report, the purpose of the report is to update the status of developments of PVC firms on ESG, climate resilience, climate risk, and identifies the areas that need support and also industries joint efforts. And in the survey is more like it's a survey based, and we from the survey we have some findings and observations, and then through the expertise in within the working groups, we come up with some recommendations and follow up. The survey will consist of 34 questions in 5 parts, and first part will be general information and returning to related to investment and fundraising process, compliance reporting, decarbonization, carbon neutrality, and the timeline. The report conducted in early of 2023, and we spent the rest of the years to formulate the report, and we have a strong team. We have people from CPs, Capitans, EY, HKGFA, OTS, and PwC and Stevens Howard, and some of them are the panels today as well. And the report will probably focus on 3 areas: fundraising, investment process, compliance reporting, decarbonization, and climate change as well. So for the details of the questionnaires and details of respondents' dynamic and suggest readings and links to repositories will be in the appendix. Okay, why we have this initiative? Because we found ESG focus AUM exceed almost $100 billion for the first time, and the growth is very significant. And in the report, we have get the 31 respondents. The estimate AUM is more than $122 billion, and it includes more than 183 funds. So for the type of funds, we have a very complex and comprehensive, like we have funds, we have private equity, venture, fund of fund, real estate, hedge funds. Yeah, so, and we have, for the dynamic, we have very diverse investors type, and about 81 of the respondents are not first-time fund. Okay, and we have some key findings: ESG, climate change, and carbon emission, because particular Scope 1 and 2 are the top 3 areas considered during fundraising, investment, and operation stage. Okay, and for the three initiatives why people care about the ESG, because investors pressure, reputational risk, and also regulations. And 60% of respondents have no alignment or are not familiar with the TCFD framework, at least for the late 2022. I think it improved a bit in 2023. And the top 3 challenges from the respondents will be lack of human resources, insufficient knowledge, and also is costly. And in terms of carbon neutrality, 1/3 of the respondents have not started considering investment in decarbonization or climate change related investment. And there's a gap in carbon-related target setting. Nearly half of the respondents have not yet considered establish their carbon-related targets. And for the sustainability standard framework, usually recognized by the respondent will be PRI, TCFD, ESG rating, SDG, and ISSB is in the mid-range, and the respondent also consider SFDR as well. So that they are the key findings of the report. And for ESG, climate change, and carbon neutrality are the top 3 areas considered during the fundraising, investment, and operation. However, not all respondents have established policy or mechanism to monitor sustainability performance of their portfolio or holdings in the 3 stages. So investors may have concerns on support claims, for example, like greenwashing regarding sustainability performance of GP and the portfolio companies, particularly ESG-focused funds. In order to ease investors' concerns, several approaches were proposed, including embedding ESG into the operation of GPs, improving transparency, setting up measurable KPIs, and creating impacts. And in the report, we have in each of the section, we have more insights and observations. And yeah. So what's next action plans? And this report highlights the challenges faced by the respondents and various human resources, adequate knowledge, and financial budgets required for embracing the ESG practices, and also comply with the ESG reporting and disclosures rules, and also management climate risk, and ultimately capturing climate opportunities. And on the basis that the report finding HKGFA and its asset owners and asset management work streams will continue to work with and support the development of industry through the capacity building opportunities to enhance sharing with GPs, industry practitioners, fostering collaboration, knowledge exchange in the public and private sectors to provide capacity building opportunities. And one more thing to add, in terms of capacity building, HKGFA is now a member of organization of the Capacity Buildings Alliance of Sustainable Investment. They call CSI to provide the capacity building for ENDE, emerging markets and development economies. So it's official launch in 5th of December in COP28, and I'm in COP28 now, and willing to share after the event. And I follow the spirit of COP28, Unite, Act, Delivers. I hope to link the industry practitioners together. Okay, please scan for the report and download, and there are lots of content inside. And yeah, stay tuned.
Great, thank you, Dennis, for succinctly highlighting the survey key findings, and more importantly, reporting live from COP28. In the upcoming panel discussions, we will hear how the PE and VC firms are responding to the top 3 key drivers for ESG investments, going into detail on investor pressure, reputational risk, and regulation and challenges, and also in addressing talent knowledge and balancing this with costs. So next, I would like to introduce Penelope. She's the moderator for the panel. Penelope is the partner at Stevenson Harwood, specializing in investment funds. Penny started the firm's Asia ESG initiative at Stevenson Harwood and was instrumental in joining the Hong Kong Green Finance Association. And she has also been a very active member. She's also a member of the firm Stevenson Harwood's Global Decarbonisation Committee. So let me pass the floor to Penelope. And again, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box so that they can be answered after the discussion. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Jenny. First, let me take this opportunity to wish everyone an early Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. We hope for the better next year. So now let me introduce our panel speakers today. First, we have Amy Fong, who is the Managing Director of Fountain Fest. She specializes in strategic initiatives and sustainability of Fountain Fest. And then we have Clinton Pang, who is the Associate Director of PwC, specializing in responsible investment. Fiona Chin, Vice President ESG of Temple Water, and Grace Lee, Partner and Group COO of Teaming Venture Partners. So we're very honored to have them share with us today their experience and some of the things that they have experienced. So without further ado, let me ask maybe Clinton the first question. So now going back to the survey draws a lot of insight into how GPs approach ESG, whether it's on fundraising, investment integration, compliance, and reporting. So perhaps, Clinton, you can give us an overview on what you're seeing in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. This is Clinton speaking. Just a little bit of sharing about the market because, I've been working in the ESG with a lot of different asset class or alternative investors over the past few years, and actually have witnessed, the significant change in the ESG discussions. So I guess there are three main points that I could summarize. So the first one, it's about the discussions that we've been having, right? So a few years ago, the questions that I guess asked most of the time were actually from different IR team reaching out asking about how to help them to write an ESG policy. It's mainly because it's driven by they are getting asked by their LPs. So a few years ago, I think the ESG discussions is all around writing policies around this region. And then more recently, we're getting more questions, coming from, let's say, C-suites or head of ops or COO asking us to actually help them to integrate ESG into their daily operations. So for example, how to actually bake ESG into the investment lifecycle, or how do we actually help the ops team to collect data for, writing up report or to answer some of the LP questionnaire, so that discussion has transformed from, ESG policy into the operational. Until more recently, we're actually having more discussions with, the CEO or the investment team head about how to launch, ESG funds, or they're more thinking about, okay, how can we actually use it as more go-to-market using ESG or sustainability to that. So I can definitely see how the market, has shifted over the years. So before, ESG is more like a defense mechanism for a lot of GPs to use this as more like a shield to defend and tell the LPs on how they are using ESG, or they have ESG as a mechanism. To, these days, they are more actively using ESG as more like a sword, about thinking about, how do we actually go to tackle the market to help with fundraising, or, what's the investment strategy that we can use with ESG. And it is very interesting to see, throughout the years, a lot of these PE, especially for the PEVC industry, it's really interesting. It's because a lot of the times, when people talk about ESG, they didn't realize that they're actually talking with different stakeholders, and it actually means different things. So for example, sometimes when we talk to ops team, it's more about getting data, how do we actually manage ESG? But when we're talking about investment team on ESG, it's more about the risk and opportunity. How can we actually use these non-financial metrics to help guide them to look into the target, and how can we create value from helping the company grows into a better company, right? So you can see the discussions has evolved over the years, and based on the different teams, actually the outcome are very, very different, and that's significant when we're seeing in the market, especially the Asia region. Second point that I want to talk about, it's about like, ESG. When we work with a lot of clients, one thing that we've learned is that, it's not one size fit all. And the reason for that is because even though we're talking about PEVC industry, however, if you actually dissect the asset class, you can actually see, for example, venture capital will be very, very different from buyout fund. It will be very, very different from private debt. It will be very, very different from distressed asset. Even though you can categorize this as pre-investment and post-investment, however, how they actually integrate ESG will be completely different, because you have to take into account what's their own in-house investment strategy, and also what's the industry that they are looking into. So I think like this has evolved into such a complicated topics, and that's what we're seeing in the market. And we are working a lot of times to come up with a strategy to fit into different houses so that they can use it to make themselves stand out, rather than trying to turn it into fitting them into ESG. So I guess like these are the two significant changes in the market that we have seen for the past few years. From PwC's angle.
Well, thank you, Clinton. That's very comprehensive, a lot of information. But taking it closer, maybe we Amy, if you don't mind sharing, as Clinton just now mentioned, different private equity firms would have different strategies subject to their in-house strategy and also the industry they're looking at. So as a buyout fund, how do you and your team handle ESG? You're on mute, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. And as Clinton mentioned, our ESG journey has evolved over the years. And when we first started, actually, we've always considered ESG related considerations, even when the fund was launched back in 2007. Back then, it wasn't called ESG. A lot of the concepts within ESG was just part of regular due diligence, right? Checking compliance, checking maybe the carbon emissions part wasn't a part of that, but a lot of it, the social governance areas, were part of standard due diligence. So that was part of regular due diligence. And in 2019, we actually engaged the help of PwC to take a revamp of our policy and approach. So really looking at the entire investment cycle, from pre-investment, investment, post-investment, and exit. So each stage has its own ESG approach and checklist. So at the time, we put together a checklist for due diligence purposes. We had some KPIs that we'd like our portfolio companies to provide over time. Fast forward 4 years later, right now, we're actually having a revamp of our policy and approach. For example, in the pre-investment stage, we are actually refining the due diligence process, making it mandatory even from the moment the deal team put together a concept memo. Typically, in the past, for example, we only require a complete set of ESG due diligence at the very final IC memo stage, which obviously, mandates that, every single investment has to pass through the ESG lens. However, it also, because it is not required until the very final stage of investment, sometimes we did uncover things that we would have liked to uncover earlier on. Hence, this latest upgrade actually divide up the process into even pre-screening, so that we will be able to identify the highest risks earlier on. We also mandate, having our portfolio company sign a letter of undertaking from the moment the investment is made, so that they would provide what we need from an investor's point of view for taking stock of how they're doing in ESG. One thing to note is that we recently signed up for sustainability-linked loan. Because of the SLL, the sustainability-linked loan, we have certain commitments that we have to we need to make, and we would like to achieve in order to qualify for some cost savings in our credit facilities. So it is a great incentive for us at the fund level, and also we'll try to motivate our portfolio companies to meet those targets. And those targets would include everything from carbon emissions to DEI to having proper governance. So now that we're updating our policy and approach, we are ensuring that we are incorporating these SLL commitments into our latest policy and approach. We're also incorporating every other commitment that we've made under various membership. So for example, UNPRI or EDCI, which is ESG Data Conversions Initiative. And our LPs also have certain expectations in terms of our KPI targets and achievements. So we're incorporating as comprehensively as possible into our newest set of policies and checklists.
Wow, thank you, Amy. That's very, very interesting to hear about the actual implementation of the ESG management process into your company. But let me turn to Grace now. Grace, what about teaming? Is as a VC, I would imagine there will be some difference in your policy compared to a buyout fund. So maybe if you don't mind sharing some of these differences and how teaming handle ESG.
Sure, Penelope. Sorry, everyone, I have to keep my, window, up in order to preserve the bandwidth. So sorry for that. Exactly. That's I see actually a lot of difference between PE funds and buyout funds or PE firms like Invest in the adoption of ESG. In general, I would say the whole ESG adoption trend in the VC world comes in a bit later, than these leading PE funds and also buyout firms. There are a couple of reasons. And maybe I share a bit the investment strategy. Typical VC strategy is early stage minority investment in a large portfolio of startup companies. So with that in mind, so when we push the ESG initiative and to secure buy-in from all the stakeholders, I tend to think that we need a light touch, materiality-based, progressive and pragmatic approach. Okay, so what does it mean? What are the difficulties that we are facing? So I'll point to three areas. And one is the sheer volume of a portfolio companies. So in a typical multi-hundred of million or billion VC funds, normally we would have about 50 to 80 portfolio companies. So these large group of portfolio companies, when compared to the PE or buyout funds, maybe 10 to 30, the workload is very, very different. Secondly, in terms of level of influence, so in general, the percentage of ownership of VC investment tend to range between single digit to 20% or so. And some of them, when we incubate, the investment size is also, very different. Can be as low as 1 million at the, first check for the incubation project, and to all the way, 20, 30 on average, and to the high-end, high conviction deals of 60, 70 million. So this check size is very different. So that means the level of influence, although we usually, are the lead investor in the round that we, Series A or Series B, but still when the portfolio companies continue to raise funds, the shareholding and influence will be somewhat diluted. So that's the second challenge that we're facing. Now, the third challenge, I think, is the financial and time resources of the portfolio companies. So if the company is a very early startup stage, it is in the barely surviving, business building stage, they would hardly have a lot of resources to take care of a lot of this ESG initiative from the VC funds. Then compared to a later stage, when the company gets too close to IPO, they are, we are on the same boat. Definitely, we need to help them and prepare them to comply with all the IPO, ESG requirements in different exchanges. So these are, all the three, I would see the difficulties and also the differences compared to the PE funds and also the buyout funds. So when we talk about actual implementation, at Chiming, we share a lot of similarities with what Amy mentioned. We do have a well-defined pre-investment due screening checklist, pre-investment final approval checklist, and post-investment monitoring checklist. So we do have that. And on top, because Chi-Ling has 2 established franchises, healthcare and technology and consumer, that added to the complexity. Because naturally, even in healthcare, we have different sectors, biotech, medtech, diagnostic. So in each of the subsector, we have a clearly defined sector-focused strategy for the deal team to follow. A general approach doesn't work any longer. So I think this is what we, incorporate, how we incorporate all these like DD in our investment process. And then, and also, post investment, as I said, as the company grows, at the later stage, we tend to work very closely with advisor. Well, actually, PwC is the one helping us also to from day one, we ask them to help us on refining our ESG policy to actually provide training to the deal team. And the later stage, when portfolio get to a point that they are ready for IPO, we would normally engage the external service provider to help them, in that process. So I think these are the things that we do at the investment stage. Then also, just to touch upon on the reporting, I think the reporting of our ESG progress and results are also very important. So we work very closely, linked together with the IR team, marketing team, deal team, and LP. So we have different kind of reporting suitable for different purposes. Maybe a more in-depth portfolio statistic summary, and then a portfolio showcases for our advisory board member, some of the important LPs. A general one to be presented at AGM, and also one for media. So this is how we incorporate. Although we're still learning along the way, we come in late than maybe FountainVest, as far as 2007, but I think we're picking up, and we are seeing the VC community in general picking up a lot in recent years. Thank you.
That's good to know. Thank you, Grace. Interesting insight from both Amy and Grace on the integration. So I'm referencing back to the report for those who have not seen it. Part of the conclusion said that it reviews that 25% of the respondents currently have ESG related funds, and 58% are actually considering setting up ESG funds in the future. So Fiona, I understand that Temple Water has a decarbonization fund. Maybe you can share with us how Temple Water developed this fund strategy and how it differs from a typical private equity fund?
Sure. So the quick answer to this question is why we want to invest in decarb or particularly hydrogen is that actually we have the demand from the bus company side. So we do not have a hydrogen ecosystem here. And just giving a background to the audience, Temple Water is the shareholder of Bravo Transport and Citybus. So Citybus has committed to a net zero goal by 2045. And we have introduced the first battery electric double-decker bus to Hong Kong 2 years ago. And after some time of testing, we found that the electrical bus is not suitable for Hong Kong environment. So the battery is too heavy, the charging time is too long, and it takes 3 hours fast charging time to get our buses to be fully charged. And for one charge, the driving range is just only 200 kilometers. And then we have a hilly terrain, we have a very hot and humid weather where air cons actually consume a significant proportion of our electricity. So we started to look into alternatives, and hydrogen vehicle seems to be a choice, which we found that the efficiency and performance is comparable with diesels. While we refill in 5 to 10 minutes time, the driving range can be up to 400 kilometers, which is same as a diesel bus. And as you may hear from the news, last week, Temple Water and Citybus has launched the first hydrogen refilling station in Hong Kong in our Citybus West Kowloon depot. So this will support the Citybus hydrogen bus operation alongside early next year. So which will be expected the hydrogen buses will be on the road probably in January next month. So now, as a bus operator, we have the demand on using hydrogen. But what we are actually lacking is the hydrogen value chain in Hong Kong now, and also in Asia, which is the upstream service provider. So this would include the production, the generation, distribution, storage, electrolysis technology, pyrolysis technology. So with the decarbonization fund set up, we hope to invest in those upstream technologies and build the whole value chain in Hong Kong. So this shapes our Temple Water investment strategy. So Temple Water Decarbonization Fund is an SFDR Article 8 fund, which ESG considerations are embedded in our investment process, from the first stage screening to post-investment ESG portfolio management. We wanted to develop an investment strategy which is dedicated to hydrogen and its related value chain. So as we all know, hydrogen technology is more mature in US and Europe. We aim to bring the technology from the Western side to Asia market through investing into it. For example, we're now having a deep dive analysis for an alkaline electrolyzer startup, which has the highest efficiency in the world at 95%, while others are usually 75% only. So this will enable the technology to achieve a LCOH levelized cost of hydrogen of less than $2 per kg. Given our experience in the hydrogen sector, we are also actively exploring the adjacent verticals where there are gaps in technology, and there is room for disruptive startup to capture market share. So energy storage is a crucial part of decarbonizing the electrical grid, and hydrogen itself can be used for long duration energy storage. And hydrogen is also a key feedstock for value-added products. So we are actively exploring carbon capturing utilization, CCUS, and for the production of sustainable aviation fuel and green building materials. So this is our first year launch of the fund. So up till now, 1/3 our pipeline are from US, 1/3 are from Europe, and 1/3 are from the APAC. We would like to stay with the company rather seeking great returns. We wish to stay with the company for around 3 to 5 years. So given that actually we are from a PE background with a very strong PE mindset, we seek collaborative growth with our portfolio company for achieving greater success with financial returns, sustainable gain, and of course with ESG enhancements. So this is how our impact investing philosophy works.
Well, thank you, Fiona. Just now, Fiona mentioned that their fund is a SFDR fund, and there are obviously a lot of acronyms in the ESG world. I think there's a Q&A question that came in on the same thing as well. So SFDR is actually a sustainable finance disclosure regulation that mandates ESG disclosure obligations under the European legislations. And obviously there are a lot of standards and frameworks. If you look at if you looked at the figure or the chart that Dennis shared earlier, on the different standards, it looks more like a bowl of alphabet soup. It took me a while, and I actually have a cheat sheet in front of me all the time to know what's what. So, Grace, maybe I'll put this question to you. How do you and your team actually all handle all these unknown in this ESG space? And are you working on any new initiatives?
Yeah. Yes, of course. So I think, as you mentioned, there are so many standards out there. So what to follow and which to follow. So for us, we have the ESG policy and incorporation into our investment process for quite some time. Recently, we are in the process of applying to UNPRI. So we pick UNPRI because, there are many good standards out there, benchmark. But this is often, they're not the most often cited kind of like standard, from, the kind of LPs that we have. Globally, US, like Europe, Australia, some of them like endowments, fund of funds, and so forth. So I think this is quite relevant to our operation, and in particular, the focus is also quite balanced as well on the E and S and G. So that is something that we're working on, and as a result of that, we definitely need to work with close advisor. As I mentioned, PwC is helping us on that, to incorporate that. And to also, provide training to all facets of the stakeholders within our firm. So that is our recent initiative. We already have a very senior ESG committee comprising our 2 sector heads, our head of healthcare and head of T&C, technology and consumer. They are also the most senior managing partners of the firm, and together with me on the ESG committee. But we, in recent 2 years, we expanded the group to include, basically every key functions. As I mentioned, fundraising is definitely important for the ESG compliance. So our team on both renminbi side and US dollar fund side. on our marketing as well, because we communicate a lot, and also our GR, government relations, because we also have sort of a CSR, corporate social responsibility, incorporated in a firm starting from last year. So we have pledged a multi-year donation and training for those entrepreneurs in the rural area in China. And then we also just, approved it. On every year, there will be 3 days of paid leave for the employees to do all kind of like charitable activities. So these are our latest, application on PRI as one of the standards, and our newest corporate strategies.
Oh, thank you, Grace. How about you, Amy? And what's for Fountain Vest team?
In terms of the membership?
Yes, in terms of what your team is handling in terms of, for example, like training internally, getting into like new initiatives and signing, yes.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, we have upgraded our policy and approach, and to that end, once the whole policy and approach is being finalized, the upgraded version, we will be rolling out training and awareness for our team. This is also part of our SLL commitment too. And as Grace mentioned, because there are actually lots and lots of different types of requirements out there. So we've decided that we have joined UNPRI since 2020. We also joined the ESG Data Convergence Initiative earlier this year. So we hope that by being as a member of these global organizations, we will be able to provide transparency and standardized KPIs that is widely accepted, especially since many of our LPs are global LPs, with expectations of good governance and transparencies and KPIs. So that is one of the main reasons why we are participating in these global initiatives. We also have a very significant involvement beyond investment stage, post-investments. We strongly believe in the possibility of creating value from ESG enhancements of our portfolio companies. So as we are a buyout-focused firm, we do have the ability to influence and to mobilize our management teams to drive them to enhance their ability to deliver. So since 2019, especially in the last year and a half, we have increasingly been involved with the management teams in everything from enhancing their diversity and inclusion ratio, and also helping them in tracking their GHG emissions and formulating a net zero pathway. So these are all new initiatives that we have embarked on. As far as internally, we have had an ESG committee at our fund level since 2020, which I'm the chair of, but it also comprised of senior managers, the head of our industrial and consumer teams, the head of our ops teams, and as well as our founding CEO and our head of HR and our head of general counsel who heads up legal and compliance. So we do believe a very well represented ESG committee will help us drive the behavior in a very comprehensive way. In addition to an ESG committee, we also established subcommittees since last year. These subcommittees are chaired by our directors and VPs within the organization. The whole reason behind that effort is that we want the whole ESG culture and to permeate the bigger, broader organization. So it's not just a top-down approach, but really from a bottom-up, more and more young people could participate and lead different aspects. So the different aspects include diversity and inclusion, including green office, including CSR, philanthropic efforts. So every year we have our Beijing team, our Hong Kong team, Shanghai team will come together to work together on charitable philanthropic initiatives, both in China and in Hong Kong. So we truly believe the success of ESG is contingent upon broad representation and broad adoption throughout the organization. So hence, that's why we went from just purely having senior people involved to having more mid-levels, up-and-coming leaders of the organizations to take lead in different aspects. And post-investment wise, we have, help our portfolio companies establish their ESG governance in many ways, including finding board members with ESG experience, and also helping them set up the ESG function. In some cases, recruiting new people to join the portfolio company to lead ESG work. And if that is not possible, at least have somebody held accountable at a senior level to drive ESG initiatives. So, from multiple fronts, we have been doing a lot more since 2019, and we will continue to do more going forward.
Thank you, Amy. It sounds like both Fountain Investor and Teaming are taking a very holistic approach on their ESG policy. And I want to zoom in a little closer to some of the findings of our report now. If you guys have a chance to take a look, one of the key challenges that comes up repeatedly in the report actually refers to insufficient human resources. I know both Amy and Grace did say that they want to have internal buy-in, cultivate the culture in their company as well. But in terms of the human resources, it can come in various fronts that affect, for example, how the company set up their carbon reduction target, making full disclosures, fulfilling the disclosure requirements, and managing climate risk, etc. So maybe Fiona, as a dedicated in-house ESG specialist at Temple Water, maybe you can share with us your role and responsibility, particularly at Temple Water.
So as I mentioned, Temple Water Decarbonization Fund is an SFDR Article 8 fund. So ESG considerations are embedded from first-day screening to post-investment ESG portfolio management. So my core duty here in Temple Water is make sure this is executed and ensure the portfolio company selection and management fits our ESG mandates. So we have a targeted exclusion policy, which includes negative screening on particular sector. And in our due diligence process, we have included ESG criteria in our scorecard system. So as required by SFDR, there are sets of questionnaire to be answered by the due team and the target companies before we make any investment decision. So for sustainable investment, the investee needs to go through the PAI, Principal Adverse Impact Assessment, as defined in the SFDR. For our portfolio companies, we also expect ESG enhancement with them. So my job at Temple Water is to work closely with the deal team and different departments, putting an ESG angle in all our investment process. Of course, also targeting hydrogen and decarbonization opportunities for the group and portfolio companies. So I work closely with our portfolio companies in their ESG management and making sure they fit our firm ESG mandates. For example, under our decarbonization fund, we are now working with one of our portfolio company, Wisdom Motor, for ESG reporting preparation and ESG strategy enhancement. For our PE portfolio, we also incorporate ESG management enhancement in the 100-day plan. For example, we have recently closed a deal on acquiring a semiconductor component manufacturer in Singapore. So we have listed out an ESG action plan for them to work on in their 100-day plan. Also, as we are the first mover in building the hydrogen value chain in Hong Kong, we also work with external stakeholder and business partner in building the value chain together. So in short, internally, I need to work with different departments for making sure that ESG executed at operation level and management level. And externally, I need to work with a lot of stakeholders in shaping the discussion, fostering the decarbonization technology enhancement, and also especially in the hydrogen value chain building. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Very interesting sharing from Amy, Grace, and Fiona. And of course, Clinton, you're not off the hook. I believe this is our last question before we run out of time. But Clinton, we know you have been in the role of advising on ESG strategy, investment framework, and development and implementation for many years. And you must have come across something very unique or different in the PCVC cases that is worth sharing with the audience, perhaps.
Yeah. So apart from the cases that Fiona, Amy, and Grace has talked about, there are also a lot of interesting cases out there that we've been working with various different clients. So for example, to name a few, we have been working on decarbonization for the whole PEVC portfolio. So what we're doing, we're helping the client, the PE client, it's basically to deep dive into each individual portfolio company to help them to collect carbon emission data for each individual company, so that we can aggregate to the fund level, so that it enables the PE to come up with a fund level strategy for decarbonization. And that's been a pretty cool project that we've been working on. And I think like the key factor for that is not only that we have to get the PE guys to buy in, we also have to get the portfolio companies management to buy in, because we have to let them understand that we're not trying to make their life difficult, but it's more like how can we actually help them to come up with all these ESG data, right? Especially on carbon related data, because a lot of them they can't see it, and that's why to them it's a really difficult topic to visualize how do we actually come up with the data. So that's one of the few projects that we've been working on, which some other industry players are working on. The second thing that a lot of the times that we'll be getting to ask, it's about ESG data collection. As Amy was mentioning, now Fountain Invest is doing EDCI. There are all certain ESG metrics out there that would hit certain ESG metrics. So for example, EDCI, they will request, let's say Fountain Invest or some other PEs to collect certain data, and sustainability linked loan, there's also certain ESG data. Now, the difficult part, coming up with the metrics is actually not that hard, because like they're more or less, similar. It's more about like finding the right units and the measuring techniques. But when it comes to real implementation, or especially for the PE, especially for VC actually, in order for you to come up with those data, it's actually quite difficult. And the reason for that is because a lot of these data are coming from different departments from the portfolio company. So imagine you're trying to get like, diversity or male versus female. These data, you probably have to, ask the HR department of the portfolio companies. Whereas like, for example, like electricity consumption or, fuel consumption, these are the data that you might probably have to get it from, let's say, finance, or individually from the the shop level. So I think like one of the trick that how do we actually help them, it's instead of just designing the questionnaire which looks simple, it's about like how to actually train people so that the portfolio company would know how to give the PE company or the PEVC, right? Because like we always say, like garbage in, garbage out. If we're just building a template without actually educating people how to use it, then it's just a template. Because like no one would know like whatever data that the portfolio companies are giving the PEVC, and at the fund level you have a bunch of numbers adding together that doesn't mean anything, because like it's not reliable. So ultimately that's a huge topic on how do we actually help a lot of these guys, because like going forward, if you think about like let's say Temple Water or new funds that you're trying to do like impact, a lot of the times that your LP would be asking you about track record, based on your previous investments, do you have a track record of how you are doing it? And without those, it's actually really hard for you to launch new funds, or to raise more, or have fruitful discussion with a lot of different LPs. That's also one of the few areas that we're actually helping a lot of these industry players working on. And finally, as Grace and Amy was mentioning just now, a lot of the times you have to do like stakeholders reporting, and reporting actually comes in different form, right? Like it could be a closed door, just for your certain LPs kind of reporting, or you could be launching a public report and putting it on your website, or similar to what Fiona was saying, like if you have to do SFDR compliance, you have to do SFDR related type of disclosures, right? So I think a lot of the times we actually roll out our sleeves in PwC to work with different clients to actually help them to, gather all those information and how to actually put together into different forms of report. And especially, and I was saying like a lot of the times within the PEVC ecosystem, because a lot of the times when it comes to ESG, you're dealing with a lot of different stakeholders, which makes it like a different interpretation. So at the end of the day, how do you actually join all the dots together to put it into one report? Is actually take certain effort to and the communication within within the client. So I guess like these are the things that what we're seeing that in the market that hasn't been covered by the discussion just now. And and Penny, you're asking me ultimately what's the key success factors, and I think like the key success factor is actually the management and the team's buy-in, because a lot of the time when we talk about ESG training, half the people would have already shut their door without actually trying to listen to what you're trying to say. So I think like first to get the management buy-in to understand what's the importance of ESG, and then when it comes to teams training, it's more about how do you actually make their life easier instead of adding more burden into their daily lives. So I guess like these are the summary of what we're seeing and what we've been working on, that we hope that we can draw some insights to share with everyone here in the crowd.
Great, thank you, Clinton. I believe that's all the time we have for the panel discussion. I want to, on behalf of GFA, thank Amy, Grace, Fiona, and Clinton for sharing their insights here. And before we end, of course, we'll have a Q&A sessions, and Clinton is going to help lead that, and I'll pass the mic to Clinton.
Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly read through because there is actually quite a lot of questions here, but actually quite a few of them are quite interested to ask Fiona about the, Temple Waters Hydrogen Fund. So I think like the first question we get from here, I'll just quote directly. My understanding, it's currently Hong Kong uses gray hydrogen, which is produced using fossil fuels. When do we expect green hydrogen to be available? Fiona, perhaps you can, shed a bit of light on that.
Yes, we're currently using gray hydrogen, and that for green hydrogen, that would be coming from different sources. Probably the most foreseeable one that we can see probably is waste to hydrogen. And currently we are actually signing an MOU with the landfill operator in developing the green hydrogen technology feasibility study now. So one thing I want to emphasize is that, yes, when we talk about hydrogen, we always put a color on it. But when we say we're using electric vehicle, no one's will question about actually that electricity is produced by fossil fuel. So I would like to just take this opportunity to probably let the audience know, yes, we have currently the availability is just gray hydrogen, but we're working very closely towards using that green hydrogen. And that would involve a lot of parties to be involved, let's say the infrastructure building, and we Temple Water alone cannot make this happen. So that's why we need more, let's say, power companies, we need the government, we need other business partners to work together and really working towards that net zero roadmap for the Hong Kong. So that's all for this questions. Yeah.
Okay, that looks good. Okay, another question. This is quite interesting. This is more to do with fundraising. I guess like maybe Amy and Grace can talk a little bit more because on this. So the question reads like this: given two of the key drivers for responsible investment or impact investing are said to be investor pressure and reputational risks, do you think that embedding sustainability in investment management strategy would actually help with fundraising? So perhaps like Amy and Grace, since you guys are probably handle a lot of fundraising activities, maybe you guys can share a little bit of experience to the crowd as well.
Yes, maybe I'm happy to share with that. We just closed our Fund 4 last year. And in fact, I was invited to one of our major LPs conference on ESG policies and approach just 2 days ago. So I do want to share that, clearly, especially, European LPs, they're particularly sensitive to ESG issues, and they do have high expectations trust that their GPs would be compliant with certain standards and really make a lot of earnest effort in implementing, the ESG policies and approaches, especially those who are buyout funds, exerting the influence that we have on our portfolio companies to deliver. So absolutely, I feel, for the fund, I've been involved in the fundraising, last round of fundraising. Many of our LPs have very extensive ESG due diligence requirements and, long, package that we need to complete. And on a regular basis, annual, sometimes even semi-annual, we have to fill out questionnaires on our ESG work. So there's no doubt that it will be crucial for any successful fundraising to have a very good performance in this regard.
Okay. Maybe I can share a bit as well. For Chile, it's the same. So we have both our US dollar funds and RMB funds. Actually, LPs on both sides also put a lot of emphasis on ESG. So, the kind of like greenwashing, definitely forget about it. It's not working, definitely. But for the angle on ESG, for us, it seems that, most of our investors focus more on S&G at the moment. In particular, those in the US, the, US pension, US endowment. But, for the sovereign funds, fund of funds or insurance companies, they are taking a more holistic approach. They also care about environment, carbon emission, things like that. So it's getting to be more and more comprehensive. But one thing that our LP are also very pragmatic. They are also aware of the difference between the kind of different fund investment strategy we talk about here by LP and VC. And they know about the difficulties for VC to launch, say, 100% coverage on a portfolio. So they're pretty pragmatic. Although the questionnaire are very, very extensive, but then when we submit our results back to our LP, they are also pragmatic too. But they also want us to have a clear framework and want to see our progress year by year. So that's why, we mentioned about, the submission, the application to a reputable international organization like UNPRI or the other reputable organization would be helpful for them to have any objective benchmark that, their GPs are actually adhering to a fracking standards. So that's a bit of my sharing.
Okay, that's very insightful. Thank you, Amy and Grace, for your input. Okay, there's this question, it's directed to Fiona as well. It's about okay, so the question reads, what sort of CCUS pathway has Temple Water looked at?
So we have taken a broad perspective when we look across the CCUS pathway. So the most active established players, that those with more mature technology, would be absorption. So what we find more interesting is that which are more aligned with our hydrogen strategy is looking into the utilization of captured carbon in the production of new materials and fuels. So this can be like in the form of new construction materials, like sustainable aviation fuel, or even proteins. So like plant-based proteins that we can eat. So what is very compelling is that this change carbon from being a cost center to a new revenue stream. So integration into the upstream value chain can facilitate a more circular net zero source of fuel and materials to be worked alongside with hydrogen. So this is already gaining traction in Europe, and it says that's something Temple Water sees a lot of potential in the Asia area.
Very interesting. Okay, moving on. So this is a question from John Deng. So the question reads, what are your key sources of ESG data? So I guess the four of us, panelists could actually answer this, but I guess I can first give a general view. Maybe like Amy, Grace, and Fiona can chip in later on. So this question about ESG data. So I think especially today we have like PEVC, which are mainly investing in private market. So which is really different from secondary market, where you can actually have let's say data provider out there, let's say Bloomberg, MSCI, to provide certain data. Whereas I think majority of the panelists here are actually investing in private company, which these data are not publicly available. So I think a lot of the times would actually require the investor to actually collect the data directly from the portfolio companies. And this is something that we were covering before. So how can we capture certain KPIs and to capture certain KPIs and ESG data from the portfolio companies, and a lot of them would actually require working hand in hand together, from the portfolio companies. I guess, like, for example, like let's say Fountain Fest. If you are investing in a buyout company, then you might actually have to work with management to get with those data, right? Because apart from getting it directly from them, there's no other ways, because there's no way that you can generate data out of nothing. So I guess like that's also that's normally how we work together, and how I guess like whether we're consultants or whether you are the PEVC houses, we really have to work with the portfolio companies to get those sort of ESG data. So that's my answer from in a nutshell. I just want to check with Amy, Fiona, and Grace and see whether you guys have anything to do when it comes to ESG data.
Clinton, I think you captured it very well.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. So Fiona, you're also okay as well. Like, I guess like the metrics that you're getting would be more specific as well, right? Given you're like hydrogen, it must be more complicated than, let's say, a buyout and VC, where they are only just general plus slightly maybe industry specific. Whereas for you, like hydrogen is like a topic, heavy topic, right? I guess like the data for you guys must be even more difficult.
Yes, actually, because our decarbonization fund is venture is a VC fund, so we invest in startup. So they're probably not very mature in ESG management system. So our role, given that with a very strong PE mindset, so after we invested, we're trying to help the company to grow in terms financially and also ESG enhancement. So what I just mentioned in my panel discussion is that I need to work closely with the PC portfolio companies to make sure that they are able to get the data for our SFDR metrics reporting as well. So that is something that we need to work closely with the portfolio companies. So because we're not investing in a large company where probably those ESG data system that already capturing the data. So what we had to do is really hand in hand helping them to build up their own system doing the data collection for us. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. Okay, one final question. I guess like maybe like Amy, you can answer this. Like, this is to do with, the question reads like this: for private funds, aside from UNPRI, what other frameworks are preferred and why? So I guess like, because like Amy, you were talking about EDCI, so you probably would have done some sort of analysis back then on why did you sign up to other signatory on top of that. Perhaps like you can tell us a little bit more about like why and how did this come about, EDCI or other frameworks out there?
Yes, I gotta be honest, it is very much LP driven. So,
Okay.
The good news is actually I do find the LPs to be extremely helpful in this regard, right? Like they encourage us, and I actually have very regular dialogues with our various LPs as to what are the best things, best practices. The truth is they deal with many more GPs than I do, and they work with GPs around the world. They have seen best practices, so a lot of times I actually consult them when I come to even for like what do you think of consultants, which consultants have you seen that are particularly good, because they're in a very good vantage point, having dealt with consultants from around the world, right, and data providers or database providers rather, right, like so they do have very clear idea, like membership, what would be the right ones to join, and how that would be helpful for us. So I think in both cases, both UNPRI and also EDCI, these are coming exactly from my LPs recommending us to join. And for UNPRI, one of our LPs, actually two of our LPs actually asked me to join the Global Private Equity Committee as well. So I have to be honest, it is very much recommended and encouraged by my LPs, which committee, which association or industry groups we should join.
Sure, thank you. That's a very, very honest and thoughtful answer. It's just telling everyone, oh, basically it's LP request, and then we started to do our,
Yeah, but I mean, they are good organizations, but like you said, there are so many out there, right? Like, for me to do the homework, to do the due diligence on all the hundreds of organizations, associations is not very pragmatic. If I want to, join something that has a standard that most of my LPs are happy with, then I might as well go ask them. Seek their recommendation. Yeah, that's the easiest thing to do.
Thank you. That's a very, very honest and great answer. Cautious of time, I think we have one final questions from the audience, and I think this is a very interesting question. It's directed to Fiona. It's related to Hong Kong, so it's related to everyone here in this audience, because the quote says this: Hong Kong law currently does not allow hydrogen fuel vehicles to use any in Cross Harbour Tunnel. So technically speaking, we can't have hydrogen bus or hydrogen vehicles in Hong Kong. What do you think of that? Is this expected to change anytime soon? Or alternatively, when can Hong Kong Island see its own hydrogen filling station and buses?
So thank you for these questions. So for the first refilling station, actually that is in Kowloon Depot. So it's expected to be on the road next month, and probably for the routes that would be in the Kai Tak area. So for the second refilling, and yes, the current law doesn't allow the buses to cross in the tunnel. So that's why the second refilling station that we're going to build would be in our City Bus Chai Wan Depot. So that would be probably expected to be by the end of next year, and that would supply 5 hydrogen double-decker buses. So that's why strategically, City Bus had a majority, running majority of the bus route on the island side. So that's why we're going to build one in our Chai Wan Depot that will supply the island route for that hydrogen double-deckers.
Okay. So that's how we get around the Hong Kong law at the moment. So we have depot at different location.
So Kowloon side supply Kowloon buses, Hong Kong side supply Hong Kong buses.
Okay, that's very good to know, and I guess everyone here would actually now can tell our friends that oh, that's the reason why we have different depot in Hong Kong and Kowloon side. Thanks for letting everyone know here. Cautious of time, I guess that's the end of the Q&A. I know we have a lot of unanswered questions, but I guess with pity, we have to stop here. So I have to pass the mic back to Jenny to wrap up on today's discussion.
Great. Thank you so much, Clinton, for moderating, and also Penny for moderating, and also moderating the Q&A. So anyway, I'd like to thank the audience for joining the panel. Penelope, Clinton, Fiona, Amy, Grace, and Dennis for your very much candid insights into how GPs, LPs are approaching ESG, whether it be fundraising, investment integration, compliance, or report talent upskilling to ultimately capture some of these climate opportunities. And it's really interesting to know that there is obviously not one size that fits all. And so on the back of, there's still a lot of questions that remains. The HKGFA will continue to work with the industry to really help support and answer some of these questions, and also build some more capacity. So thank you once again to our panel speakers.